to the imaginary gallery. This is TJ, your host. This is Narcissist Trash Talk. This is actually a continuation of the previous Narcissist Trash Talk, entitled The Covert Narcissist is Consistently Inconsistent. I played it back and noticed its very short running time, and realized that I kind of sidetracked off of specific topics. ADHD took over, so I figured I would give a part two to just include a few more details and expansion on some of the ideas, because I brought certain things up and then just went on to the next. There's more to say. One of the things I brought up in the beginning was a non-cluster B, non-toxic type person usually has I said before, a core set of values, morals, beliefs, and so on. That's what makes them who they are. And I'm going to give an example here of how this looks. I also said that you find yourself with a faulty compass when you're dealing with this type of creature, because you assume that they're being real, and you discover later they're not. And I mentioned how they override reality, which I've covered in other places. But what I'm going to do now is give just an example. It is a typical scenario that could happen to help you identify exactly what was being referred to as far as this consistently inconsistent, in case it wasn't clear enough. So we're going to create a fictitious person. We'll say it's you. So you are very much against smoking because you had a close relative who smoked die of lung cancer. As a result, anytime you're out in public, if someone flirts with you and they are smoking, deal breaker, you're out the door. Even if they smile and say hi or whatever, you're out the door. And then let's say as well that you're totally against violence because you were in a long-term marriage or relationship where your partner became violent and dislocated your jaw, and you had to have a jaw wired shut for months. And as a result of that, you feel very strongly against violence. Well, these are just two examples of you building your core value system, which excludes smoking and violence. So that's part of who you are. So that comes out here and there. If you're in social interactions or gatherings and people are like, hey, want to go smoke with us? You'd be like, you know I can't stand that. And it's just like a part of you. It's a characteristic. It's a core value. Well, this is, again, representing a non-cluster B, non-toxic regular person. That's how a regular person is made up. They've got their beliefs and they stick to them. Enter the narcissist. We've covered how they will find a potential target who has something that they want or think they can get that they don't deserve. A situation that may occur could be one where this character we've just created comes in contact with a cluster B monster who is covert, so you don't know. So, for the sake of this example, we'll take the newly created character, which we're calling you, and we'll take your character who's recently moved, we'll say, to a new city and has started a new school. So you're in your classes and you're scanning the room and you're seeing goofy-looking students, you're seeing intelligent-looking students, you're seeing hot, beautiful students, you're seeing all kinds of things. And before you know it, some hot person, boy or girl, approaches you and says something about, oh, I like your earrings. Oh my God, where'd you get those? And let's say they are unique earrings that you went to a special store in some far-off country and bought them, and you always thought they were beautiful, but other people don't seem to like them, so this instantly makes you feel like, wow, someone noticed my earrings. Oh, thanks, and you feel really comfortable talking to this person. So let's say you do that, and then you'll run into that person again the next day in the hallway. Another compliment comes about your purse or your bag or your whatever, and you notice again that each time you're around this person, you end up feeling a little better for the rest of the day because you're stressed out with all your new classes and new teachers and new lessons. So you may later have this person say, hey, would you mind getting some coffee after school one day? And you might say, oh, sure, I'll go. And you yourself are single, and you've been that way a while, and you're happy that way. and you think this new person's kind of intriguing, so you go to the coffee shop after class, and then you start to think, oh no, what if this person thinks I want to date him or her? I'm not really ready for that right now. I'm trying to get my college career together, and so you don't want to lead on this person because what? Because you have a conscience, because you can feel empathy, and because you know that this person may just be complimenting you because they really like you and want to get closer to you, and maybe you're not ready for such a thing, or you don't think you're ready for such a thing. So chances are you may decide, rather than being rude and risking hurting the person's feelings, you'll just bring it up in conversation when the subject comes up, or just bring it up. Like if you see a couple and you hear, oh, they're dating, you may say, oh yeah, I dated someone like that once. Oh, it was horrible. I don't date anymore, or something like that. You may send out signals to say that you're not the kind of person who's seeking anyone special for the moment. And because you have your empathy, you're concerned because you think maybe this person has a tiny little crush on you, and you don't want to lead the person on, but at the same time, you can't help the fact that you really like the feeling of having your purse and your earrings recognized when other people didn't like them, and that to you is some special thing. So you eventually tell the person how you feel about close relationships, and to your shock, surprise, and happiness, this person says, oh, I completely understand. I feel the same way. Well, that's going to make you feel relieved because you were afraid that because you went to the coffee, now the person's going to think that you owe them something and so on. And instead, you're being told, oh, no, I'm just like that too. I just want to hang out with you for coffees. So you feel good. Well, let's say then because of this, you see the person again. And then since you've made it clear what your intentions are or are not, you may eventually bring up subjects like how you got to this point. And maybe you'll bring up like, oh, first, one thing I can't stand is smoking. Oh, because you see someone, let's say, walk by in the restaurant smoking and it's against the rules, and you like throw a fit and, excuse me, and the other person just sits there and watches. And then later your conversation moves on into violence and how horrified you are of it and how your jaw was dislocated and that's why you feel this way. And to your surprise, this person says to the smoking thing, oh, I think smoking is disgusting too. Oh, really? You do too? Oh, wow. But yet you can't help but notice that when you first met, you noticed the scent of smoke in the person's hair. But you said nothing because the person was being too nice and you didn't want to ruin it. Later, you discussed the violence thing and how your jaw was dislocated. Then you hear, oh, that's terrible. I had something similar to that too once. And you just feel each moment that passes closer and closer to this person. It's a random person who liked your jewelry, and now all of a sudden you're learning you have all these things in common, and most people you meet don't feel this way about smoke or about violence. So you're like thinking, wow, this is great. Well, that's how these people sneak their way in, because their intention, more than likely, is to capture you. And all these things we've been hearing are what we call the mirroring. They're acting as if they're 100% compatible with you and your little viewpoints on these subjects, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I really wasn't looking for romance, but at least this person I feel comfortable with, at least this person understands where I'm coming from, and you just leave it at that. Well, guess what happens down the road? You're still hesitant about any kind of serious relationships. You're enjoying this one as a friendship, and then all of a sudden, the bombshell is dropped. This person says, I can't help it, I've fallen in love with you. With all this positive feedback, you may be tempted to think, wow, but then again, with your core value systems, you also have intelligence. And you know that the levels of interaction you've had with this particular person over a very short few-week period of time is far from enough, at least to your standards, to determine any types of intense feelings of love towards anyone or anything. But again, you see this person with their puppy dog eyes saying, oh, I just think about you all the time. I didn't mean for this to happen. And then it comes to a point where you feel like, oh, great, well, I've made my position clear, and you are a real person, so you're not going to snap your fingers and then all of a sudden say, okay, let's get married tomorrow, because that's not how you are. But you're seeing this person, how just a few short weeks ago said that it didn't want to be involved with anyone either, and now all of a sudden it's like shopping for wedding rings to offer to you. And you're thinking that's way too fast, especially to go from the previous mind frame to this. Like, something's wrong. It's just not right. So that's how these types of relationships can begin. Because if you are an ex-target of such abuse, these people smell it like a shark smells blood. And they are like, you're perfect for them because they can always blame any insecurities you have on the ex. So when they sneak around and you accuse them of it and say that's what your ex did, they can tell you, oh, you're thinking that everyone's like your ex. It works for them as well because you've already been through the cycles of abuse, which means even though you may know they're wrong or bad, you're familiar with them. And they know that if they commit some of these acts of abuse, and even if you say, I don't recognize that, that's abuse, they will have a crafty little excuse. Oh, no, this is not abuse. You're thinking too much of your ex. I'm not like your ex. I'm nice. The reason I did this was, and they take you down some track that's completely false. So then the inconsistencies we were talking about before come up where, remember your conversation about the smoke and about the violence? Well, down the road, you happen to come across some newspaper or some social media that shows your little friend at some party with a big cigarette in his face or her face, and you see that and think, oh, what is that? We discussed this. And then when you see the person, you may say, you said you were against smoking. What's the deal with this? And if, of course, their face will not be like, oh, you found me out. It'll be, oh, that was just a joke for fun. I can't believe you think I would lie to you. And then you'll feel guilty if you have emotions and empathy and feelings and think, oh, my goodness, I shouldn't have done this. Oh, and because you're noticing the other person is not like turning red or running away. They're just like, oh, no, that was just a joke. And you find it difficult to deal with this, and this is gaslighting as well. They're acting like nothing's wrong, and you think, according to your value system, which you think is very much like this person's, using your faulty compass, and they're just acting like nothing's wrong at all. Well, you think, well, certainly nobody could act that cool about something if it was a lie, so maybe I'm thinking too much about stuff. And then you'll possibly convince yourself you're thinking too much. And then eventually, let's just say it goes on, and you come to terms with that, but then somehow you come across some kind of situation where the person's gone, and you can't get a hold of them. And then you find out from the family member, oh, he or she's in jail. And you're thinking, jail? What for? And then let's say you become skeptical because you've already noticed the strange things at first which have excuses, but then you think they could be phony. So then you notice the person's in jail, so you may go online and do some kind of background check, and let's say you do, and you find your little sweetheart, and you find like 10 assault charges of domestic violence where this is the perpetrator. And you're remembering back to your conversation of the violence, how, oh, I don't believe in violence either. I was once hurt just like you were. And you're thinking to yourself, this says the opposite. And that's when, of course, red flags surface. It also illustrates the consistently inconsistent because it's one example after another example where they're insisting that they feel a certain way about certain things. And then you're discovering examples of behaviors that state otherwise, which is why they say their actions speak louder than words, and these people's words and actions do not match up. Problem is, when you clearly see such a thing, let's say the person comes home and visits you after they've been gone, and you think, hey, wait a second, I saw another picture of you at a party with smoking, and it was like a tobacco premier brand party, and you were there in the picture. What's that about? I thought you said you were against smoking, and you'll get another type of, I told you that was just for fun. Oh, I have a friend who likes to smoke. I just pretend, or whatever they say. But you can't help but notice the smoke smell on their hair as well. At the moment, you're like, I smell smoke right now on you. What's going on here? And you may be upset. And then, of course, the person will then become a victim and say, how dare you accuse me of lying? And I told you why I was in those pictures with those companies, and why are you doing that? And you're going to, again, possibly feel like, oh my goodness, I pushed too far. And this is how these people control and play their game with you. The fact is, they're a heavy smoker and a violent person. But because they want something from you, and know that you have your strong core values, they are pretending to mirror them, but this is where they screw up, because they can't. And these discrepancies pop up. They constantly try, as I said before, override reality, where you know your core value system we mentioned. So it's not like tomorrow you're going to see someone smoking at a party and then say, oh, I'm going to go smoke at a party. No, because you're against this. But you hear the stories from this creature who's claiming to feel the exact same way you do about the subject, and then say, oh, well, I just did that for fun, or whatever excuse, and you're thinking, you don't have that value, because if you had that value, you wouldn't be doing that for any reason. It's pretty simple. But these people try to override reality and say, oh, no, I do have that strong value system. I told you I only did. And it's like, I don't care why you told me you only did it. It's phony. And this is the kind of crap that you witness, and you're hoping that you're wrong. You're hoping that this person couldn't be this retarded, because by this point you've probably been indoctrinated into their world closer, and their hooks have been sunken into you. The violence thing comes up too, where you check out the police report and you find all these violent things, and then you think back to the stories, and maybe before mentioning it you just bring up the subject again and say, hey, tell me about what happened to you again that was similar to my broken jaw, and listen, and you'll hear the victim, oh, my ex was so evil, and finally you may say, well, honey, I looked at your police record, and I see you have like 10 counts of domestic violence. And instead of that person crumbling down and saying, oh, please forgive me, it's,
what are you spying on me for? You're looking at my information online. What are you? Oh, I don't. This is weird.
They just like run away, and you're like, that's not the point. The point is you're supposed to be anti-violence. So you eventually are on your own, figuring out that this person's been fake from day one, and it's really tough to accept, because you know your interactions personally back and forth, and think, well, that had to be real. But then at the same time, you're weighing it against this and this reaction, and you're like, that's not the right reaction. A person who's anti-violence wouldn't ever do that and run off. So that's the beginning of the end, pretty much. Because the more you discover, the more there is to discover, and the more you address directly, the more you will be argued with, conversations will be twisted around, situations and concerns you have that are valid and genuine will be tossed aside, like that one about the spying. Like, who cares that I spied? You said you were anti-violence. What's the deal? Oh, so what? And they won't give you any type of response, and it's very difficult to deal with such a creature. Now I'm going to take the example just a little bit further to expand a little bit more. When you start to notice these patterns, like you find an empty package of cigarettes in the pockets of the person's jeans you're about to wash, and of course you're told, oh, that's so-and-so's, I was holding it for her or him. Another excuse. And it smells like smoke. I can't help it if she smokes. I was with her. She lost her boyfriend. I wanted to be there to help her, or something. Your mind is having a second track going at the same time, piecing together all these clues, thinking, these sound like shallow excuses. I bet the person I'm involved with is a heavy smoker. But of course, if you say that to the creature, you'll be told you're crazy, paranoid, and ridiculous. And then with the violence and all that, you'll be given the phony excuses where you have a legitimate concern, because somebody who's anti-violence shouldn't have 10 counts of violence against a domestic partner or whatever, and that still doesn't make sense. But each time you attempt to discuss such things, the conversation's deflected. The conversation's turned elsewhere. The conversation goes to things like, look, I told you 1,000 times why I had done those things. You must not have listened. And you're like, no, the problem is I did listen, and that's why I'm having the conversation with you. And then you'll learn another technique of these people, which is one of their core values. They're covert. So if you're around them and you do something they don't like, chances are you'll never know that they don't like it. Well, at least until this point. Because what will happen is you will have like a list of 20 things, 10 smoking related, 10 violent related. You are like just trying to make sense of it, because you are your core personality. You're the person you said you were. You have abilities of using logic and reason. So you decide, like, hey, let's have a discussion. I can't help but notice, and then you go through all 10 examples, or all 20, or however many, you're thinking you're talking to that person who agrees with you and believes the same way as you do, so it kind of feels stupid of you having to, like, say, hey, we talked about violence. Well, you can't understand why I'd be upset to find out that I told you all those lawsuits were fake. I'm framed. You're going to believe those lawsuits over what I'm telling you? And that's the kind of trail they pull you down. And part of you wants to believe them when they act like this child who's a victim that you're being so abusive to. That becomes the new normal, where the more you investigate or the more you ask about, the more you become demonized. And you'll start noticing eyes being rolled at you when you notice things and mention them, or after you pretty much have decided this is a closet smoker, and you're driving down the highway and you see a sign advertising some brand new brand of tobacco product, you might be saying, hey, have you tried that one yet? And because the person's trying to maintain their fictitious facade, they'll probably roll their eyes at you and say, oh, you are so rude. They will do that. They twist the situation around. The other core characteristic they have is that thing you did that they didn't like. Well, they said nothing about it, but the moment you say, look, this is really important, and you go over your details and your facts and your comparisons to the words, then magically is when that thing you did that upset them will come up. They save it. It's like they keep it in their back pocket until you dare call them out on their completely obvious contradiction in words and behavior. And that's when it's thrown, well, I can't believe that one night you had done this. And you're like, that's not the discussion here. Back to the subject. And then the person will act all upset about this other thing that's unrelated. And you can hear it and see it and think, this person's taken the focus off the... So you'll try to redirect it. You may have like a really good case, like a really good list of information that begs the person to come back with a rational explanation, and guess what? It doesn't happen. Instead, they might even flee and say, you are being so bullying, I'm leaving, you're controlling me, oh, you're hateful, and they will run away. And then you, of course, may still think, oh, the poor thing, maybe I was too harsh. And this is how this cycle goes on and on. I'm here to give you some of the reasoning behind all this. You don't want to believe this is what's happening, but I'm here to tell you what really is happening. The problem is with this type of person, they don't have those abilities you have in your core value system. You think they do because they claim they do, but then you've constantly seen evidence to suggest otherwise, but they'll never admit to it. They'll just continue with, I am anti-violence, I am anti-smoking, I told you. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't buy that. The problem is with these people, they have the shame-based personality, which we've mentioned. It's as if they don't have that ability to self-reflect or make fun of themselves. Many people can make fun of them, laugh at themselves. These people don't. If they do something wrong, they'll just blame it on bad luck or someone else, but they won't ever say anything like, oh, I guess I'm not really good at this. They just don't do it. When you uncover one of their or two of their contradictions that's very clearly a contradiction and very clearly opposed to the words they've said, they know all this, but they cannot stand to have another person, as they see it, as attacking them by simply pointing out the facts. They don't want to hear them because they want you to believe in their mask. And you are sitting there doing something as well that they can't do. They cannot look at a situation they're upset about, put it together the way you have as far as discussing it and rationally covering, look, we've all agreed to this, but then this is what's happening, it doesn't fit, let's get an explanation. They don't have the ability to do that, and I think when you do that, that really angers them because they're thinking to themselves, I can never figure out a way to bring up the situations I'm upset with, and here this person thinks they're going to tell me I did something wrong, and then they attack and do all that stuff we mentioned before. And then they can only seem to bring up such grievances when it's to deflect the conversation away from what they've done. So it can become really sickening, especially the more and more you learn. So these examples hopefully will help you if you've encountered such a situation. And if you have, realize this is how these people operate. You'll notice they didn't ever break down and say, oh, I know, I said I'd never do those things and I did them. Oh, I'm going to work on it. You won't hear that. You will hear, so what? I did it because of whatever. There's no hope for such a person. They're going to continue this same cycle. They'll think as long as people don't ask questions or check up on me, I'll be fine. Well, there's plenty to check up on and plenty of sickness, rotten evil to the core, hidden.
I am the narcopath. I'm back to give you just a few more confessions. I figured it was time since I'm getting married and all. I found my new love, and we're in love, and it's gonna last forever. We met last night at the gas station. I was pumping gas, bending over, and he liked what he saw, so I unzipped my top and showed him the rest, and the rest is history. We're in love. I figured it's safe to tell you, since I won't be needing you anymore for any more Hoovers, as you call them. Do you remember when we first started to date? And how I knew you were so pure and you wanted me to be your one and only girl? Well, I knew that
in order to keep you as at least a regular source of supply, I had to accommodate your needs. So what that meant was, I simply played the part of your girlfriend. I told you that I didn't look at any other guys. Now, of course, those nights we'd come home from the social club, and you'd find those random boys' phone numbers in my
pockets. Remember that? I used to tell you. I don't know who that was that put that number in my purse. I don't know who put that number in my pocket. Men slip me their phone numbers all the time. I don't ever call them. The truth is, every single one of those men whose phone numbers I had in my pocket, I strategically picked up behind your back. Because I can never get enough supply. I couldn't tell you this because it might have ruined my semi-regular status with you, and I couldn't have that. I just told you that people give me their number, and I hoped you believed it. It's true, they do. It's just I have sex with them, and you really didn't need to know about it because I didn't see no wedding ring on my fingers. I didn't need to tell you. I hope you understand. Besides, I'm happy now. Someday you'll find your happiness. You just have to stop being so paranoid and nosy, and quit checking up on people.
In good faith, I had asked several of you to help me find a job because I needed one. I didn't want to be a government shill anymore. Thanks a lot. The only kinds of suggestions I got were things I already do, which was to be a stripper, which was to be a whore. I do that, it's just not enough to make ends meet, if you know what I mean. I think I finally found my calling, no thanks to you people out there. I want to be next female astronaut to go into space for a total of 666 days. I know I'll get paid $6,006,600 to do it. And if I stop by McDonald's and get myself a meal of fellatio fish, fetuses, sandwiches, I know the total bill will come out to $6.66. So I think I'm gonna try it. I could be an astronaut. I could go in front of a green screen and suspend myself on cables and twirl around and try to convince the people that I'm really in space. It sounds like it could be kind of fun, if you know what I mean.